But trucking is a whole different world. And unfortunately, the environmentalists and unfortunately some of the people in Washington, D.C., who want to push legislation or make legislation don't have a freaking clue how the trucking industry works at all.
My name is Mike Mauceli, and this is the Energy Show with REI Energy, where we're energizing your investments and maximizing your tax deductions. Biden's coming after the long haul truckers. Last week, we discussed how Biden is coming after your car. Today, we're going to discover how Biden wants to put the truckers out of business to save the climate. My guest today is Louie Pugh. Louie is the Executive Vice President, Owner, Operator, Independent Drivers Association. Great to have you on the show today, Louie.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
I know there's a lot of truckers out there that are giving money to all these left-wing politicians, huh? Because they're trying to destroy your industry.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of money coming from the trucking industry toward that kind of stuff.
Well, I think a lot of the, from what I've been reading anyway, a lot of this green, push, is starting to fade because I read today, I guess the auto manufacturers are starting to pull back on the electric cars because, people just don't want to buy them. And when you talk about these long haul trucks, that's a completely different deal, isn't it? Because that's how we get most of our products moved around the country.
Yeah, it's funny. We were car shopping not long ago, and I'm a Ford guy, and I was asking how the Mach-E's were selling and the Ford Lightnings, and they're like, "We'll make you a great deal on some." So we got lots of them sitting back there. So yeah, I wasn't interested in one myself. I'm an internal combustion engine guy, but you're right. I mean, into your question, yeah, I mean, it's one thing toying with cars and people having an electric, and there's I see where electric cars make sense probably for some people in some instances, but trucking is a whole different world. And unfortunately, the environmentalists and unfortunately some of the people in Washington, D.C., who want to push legislation or make legislation don't have a freaking clue how the trucking industry works at all. And yeah, the problem is not only are the truckers going to pay for this, but each and every person in this country is going to pay for this because 70% of all the freight moved in this country is exclusively moved on a truck. 70%. That's a lot of stuff. And the other 30%, in my personal opinion, somewhere along the way, a truck touches it or has it somewhere because not too many places anymore have a rail yard at their back door or a train station in town. So somewhere along the way, even if it gets trailer, there's a truck involved somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, trucking is so much more efficient than trains and stuff like that to move them to different parts of the country and different cities. And my nephew was a trucker, and I know he had told me some stories about, driving. I mean, they drive 10, 11 hours a day, right? And they get a very short break. But if you had to turn around and I think I saw something this morning actually where, on one of these electric trucks, they'll only go about 150 miles before you have to charge them. I mean, how does an independent trucker make money, if they got to stop every 150 miles?
Well, yeah, and I've heard that. I've heard they can go up to 400 or 500. I think a lot of that's going to depend on weight, where you go, and temperature. I mean, some of the same things that affect an internal combustion engine. Maybe you don't get as much fuel mileage here as you do doing something else. But with that being said, the difference is you got to park and charge that thing for 8 to 10 hours if it's got a battery. If you got an internal combustion diesel engine, you take 15 minutes or so, 30 minutes getting on the highway and back off to fuel that truck. And you're back on the road and you don't have to do that again, maybe for another day or two, depending on what your operation is and how big your fuel tanks are. Where these battery deals, this is every day, every night. And the biggest thing that people continue to leave out of this equation, in my opinion, is that we have suffered in this country from a parking shortage that's went to a pandemic level to where we have one safe spot in this country for every 11 trucks. So, we see this stuff where these trucks, when you take a trip anywhere in the United States at night, you'll see trucks lined up on exit ramps along the side of the highway, everywhere. And that's because they don't have enough safe places to park or not enough parking places.
Mm.
Okay. So to charge a truck, the first thing you have to have is a place to park it. You don't need a truck stop with 12 diesel pumps. That isn't going to cut it. You need every spot. So you got a truck stop with 100 spaces. Every one of them spaces is going to have a battery charger in it to charge that battery. So what's that going to cost to put in? How much electricity is that going to draw? And then that trucker has to sit there for 8 to 10 hours. He gets a 10-hour break. So you say his break, because that's what they always say. They can charge these when they're taking their rest break. Okay, well, first you got to have a place to park all the trucks to do it. So we're way, way, way far ahead of getting the cart in front of the horse here.
Yeah, and like we were saying that, a lot of these truckers, they make their money by the loads that they haul, right? So if it's going to take you 3 times as long to haul a load, I mean, it really eats into the profits of these trucks, not to even mention, like you were saying, the battery charges, but how much of these batteries weigh when they put them into these trucks? I mean, is that going to put damage to highways?
That's going to put damage. Well, there's one or two ways to look at it. Either A, we leave the weights at 80,000, which is what our infrastructure is designed for now, is trucks can haul 80,000 pounds gross. The batteries we're seeing weigh anywhere from 10 to 15,000 pounds. We'll make the empty weight of the truck weigh 10 to 15,000 pounds. So that takes that 80,000 and say a trucker used to be able to haul, I'll use my example when I drove truck. With my truck and trailer, I could haul 51,000 pounds of cargo on my flatbed. A lot of the loads I hauled, I got paid by the weight too. So there's an economic thing here. So, you wanted to haul as much as you could if you got paid by the weight. So with that being said, you put that battery in my truck, that's going to take me to where I can only haul 35 to 40,000 pounds on my trailer because of the extra added weight of the battery. So, well, that means one, if I'm getting paid by the weight, I'm making less money because I can't haul as much weight now legally. Two, that means we're going to need more trucks because I'm not as efficient as I once was. So, that extra 10 to 15,000 pounds is going to have to go to another truck. And so we're needing more trucks, which is going to cause more need of more parking places, more congestion on the highway, more electricity to charge these batteries that we don't have enough electricity to charge now, more batteries, more trucks manufactured, more everything. So it really sounds to me like we're really doing a green thing here because all I hear is more, 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 more. The other thing goes into, okay, we still want the trucks to be able to haul the same amount of weight. Then we're going to have to increase what trucks are allowed to haul their gross up to say 96,000 pounds gross, which means the trucks will be heavier, which means they're going to tear the roads up more, the bridges up more, because like I said, our infrastructure is designed for 80,000, not 96,000. We're going to have to probably put an extra axle and tires on these vehicles. We're going to use extra energy to move the weight because it takes a lot more energy to move 96,000 pounds than it takes to move 80,000 pounds. So you put all these factors in as well. So again, doesn't sound to me like we're helping because if you put an extra axle, that's more tires, of course, that will have to be made, manufactured, and wore out. So again,
And I think a lot of people that saw empty shelves during COVID, I mean, they'll see a lot more empty shelves because, if you walk into the store and you're used to buying strawberries from California, there's going to be a lot less strawberries from California, aren't there? If you can't haul them.
well, like I like to say, if you thought we had a toilet paper shortage during COVID, wait till this. And maybe you don't need strawberries, but you sure need toilet paper.
I agree with you. So I read an article today where Bill Barr, he's actually filed a lawsuit on behalf of the organization, against California this week. So do you think that's going to make a difference?
I don't know what's going to make a difference. Common sense in Washington, D.C. and some of these states is what we need. We need people, and not only for this energy stuff and this green stuff, but in regulation and rules and everything. We have gotten so far away from listening to the man or woman who do the job or have the knowledge. We've gotten to this level of people, unfortunately, who they're, I don't know whether you want to call them elitists or what, but they know better. They know better. They don't
Yeah.
have a freaking clue how it works, but they know better.
Yeah. I think it's just whichever way the wind blows, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. I mean, my grandfather taught me as a young kid, you know, the smartest man is the man who admits he doesn't know what he doesn't know, or knows what he doesn't know. And there's a lot of truth to that. And that's, we've gotten way, way far away from that kind of mentality in this country. And it's so frustrating. It's just for us as an organization who advocates for the rights of truckers and small business truckers, it gets so just irritating and frustrating. You have to go up and argue with people that have never even sat behind the wheel of a truck, you know. So it's just crazy.
yeah. So you know the federal government, of course, they use the EPA kind of like their strong arm, right? Where they're trying to pressure all of these different industries on, all of this green agenda. I mean, how does that guidelines going to impact truckers?
Well, I mean, we say right now, if they don't change this or something isn't done, I mean, it's going to put small business truckers out of business. These trucks cost like three times as much money right off the get go. A small business trucker, I was one for almost 25 years. You don't have that kind of cash. You don't have that kind of equity. I mean, it was hard. It was super hard on the trucking industry and stuff in 2011 when the heavy-handed EPA rules came out on this diesel emission stuff, where you had to put the DEF in and all that stuff. And I bought one of those trucks, and it was a freaking nightmare because what they did was they passed a bunch of heavy-handed rules that the manufacturers didn't have time to get to work. So what ended up being was the trucking companies and the truckers became the guinea pigs for all this stuff. And that's what we're going to see here. But these 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 electric trucks, there's no way a small business guy is going to be able to afford it for off in the first go. Maybe some fleets can swing it, but even it's going to even be hard on the fleets. We're hearing the same thing from the big fleets, and a lot of times we all don't agree, but we're all sort of on the same page on this. It's unaffordable. The other thing that I hear no one else talking about, besides some of the stuff we talk, is the cost of repair and maintenance of these vehicles. Okay, we already got somewhat of a technician shortage and stuff and mechanics, but internal combustion engines have been around forever and lots of people know how to work on them. This stuff's all new.
Yeah.
So, you know, of course, when manufacturers, if they start making them, they'll be putting shops out there and stuff like that, probably in major metro areas and stuff like that. But the days of, you know, a small town diesel repair shop being able to fix your truck, you know, because truckers just don't go to New York City. Truckers go everywhere. You know, they go to little teeny. I used to go to a little teeny tiny town in North Dakota with like 300 people up in the middle of nowhere. They made stainless steel trays for hospitals. I took steel up there. There wasn't nothing up there, buddy. But if you had a problem, there was a Napa store and a few things that at least you could get for your diesel truck, mate, to help you. This electric stuff, you're not going to have that ability. So if there's a shortage of mechanics and a shortage of shops of people to work on this kind of stuff, that means the prices when you do have to get it are just going to be phenomenally through the roof.
How many miles can you put on one of those diesel trucks?
Oh, nowadays, I mean, guys are getting million miles. I
Million
mean,
miles?
kind of or more. I mean, that's what's frustrating. It's so frustrating in this. And when the electronic engines were first developed, I think Detroit was the first. And then as they made them better, and by 2000, all your major manufacturers had electronic engines out there. They were reliable, they were efficient, they didn't smoke, you know, you didn't have the black coal, all that stuff.
Right.
They got good fuel mileage, and we were getting million miles plus out of these motors. And then again, EPA come in and said they're too dirty. We got to do all this stuff, and they put all that stuff on in 2011. And people started having catastrophic failures. You were constantly in the shop because of this part or that part going wrong. You had to use DEF, which meant there was plastic jugs all over going in landfills all over the world that the DF was coming into. The parts, the trucks went up $20,000, $30,000 in price overnight. and it was just a complete nightmare. And oh, the fuel mileage dropped about a mile to a mile and a half a gallon. And I think they've gotten it. And I mean, one manufacturer, Caterpillar, they got out. I mean, that was a big owner operator engine manufacturer and for engine manufacturer. And when that all came down 2011, Caterpillar said, "We're done. We can't do it. We're not even going to try." And they pulled out of the truck engine market.
Wow.
The other manufacturers, I think that it's gotten a lot better from what I'm talking. They finally, but I still don't think it's what we had before. Maybe they're better, but I would like to see somebody. You see all these studies of all these things we're going to do. I would love to see a study of the unintended consequences of these things and
Yeah.
how much did it go the other way? Because I said first and foremost, we lost fuel mileage. Okay, so when you lose a mile a gallon on fuel, and trucks are running 100,000 miles plus a year, and they get 5, 6, 7 mile gallon, that's a lot of fuel. So, how much more oil did we have to drill? How much more oil did we have to haul? How much more oil did we have to refine because of this? And then how much more oil did we have to get to the truck stops to fill the trucks? So, what was that unintended consequence of that rule? What was the unintended consequence of the DEF? Because now we had to get this liquefied urea stuff that they call DEF, do whatever they do to process and manufacture that. All the plastic jugs that got filled with, and now it's pretty much at the pumps at a lot of truck stops, but it's still, for pickups and stuff like that, it's still out there in those plastic jugs. What was the environmental fallout of that? I think the same thing with these new trucks, this electric trucks. What's the environmental footprint of the batteries? What's the environmental footprint of getting rid of the batteries? What's all that going to come to? What's the footprint of all this electricity? Because that's the other thing that nobody wants to talk about. The only way these electric trucks are going to get charged is from a power plant. Most of our power, I mean, I come from southeastern Ohio where it was pretty much all coal-powered power plants, and now some are going natural gas. But that's still a resource that has to be either mined or drilled and something done. It's not like we're going to power all these trucks with windmills and solar panels. So I know that would make all the little bluebirds and the deer dance and the little happy elephant from the railroad commercials, they'd all be happy. But that ain't happening. This is real world. It's
Yeah.
going to take coal and natural gas and stuff like that to give us enough power, if we can even produce it.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
there was a motor carrier in Joliet, Illinois. I don't know what size trucks, but they were going to put in enough charging and stuff for 30 trucks. City of Joliet reached out and said, "What are you doing?" They told them, they said, "You can't do that. Your lot of 30 trucks is going to draw more electricity than the entire city of Joliet, Illinois."
yeah, and where's the power going to come from, right?
Yeah, from the coal-fired power plant. That's where it's going to come from.
It's like that big charging station that Tesla has out in California. They don't tell you that there's a diesel powered power plant down the road that's furnishing all the electricity for those electric cars.
Right. Maybe we can get that little pig on that commercial with them little pinwheels. Maybe
Yeah.
we can get one of them for every truck, and he can hold them out and charge the truck with them little pinwheels.
So what is the cost of one of these big trucks, a tractor, when you have to purchase one of them today?
About 150 to 180,000 probably is the going rate. Since, I mean,
And
they were up over 200 during COVID, but I think the prices have come back down.
I know some people that are in the finance business for those tractors, and I know people are having trouble paying for them now at these higher interest rates and getting them financed. I mean, I don't know what the cost of one of these electric vehicles is going to be, but to push some kind of mandate, I think there's 13 million tractors on the tractor trailers on the highway
Something like
now.
that, yeah.
And
Yeah,
about
something like that.
less than 13,000 of these electric trucks. I mean, when they push this mandate, I mean, how are companies going to be able to afford to make that transition?
Well, and I don't know, because my understanding is one of these new trucks will cost somewhere in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. So yeah, I mean, put it in perspective. I owned 5 trucks in my career of trucking. First one was used, and I bought 4 new ones after that. I bought my first new truck in 1998, and it was like $108,000. and I bought another new truck in early 2000s, and I paid approximately 105, 106,000 for that truck. And then again in 19, and of course, all the time you're building equity too. So you get, you're paying less a little less with your trade in. In 2007, I bought a new truck and I paid 109,000 for that. In 2012 or 2011, I guess, late 2011, I bought my last new truck. This was after the whole last big EPA diesel thing came into play. That truck was $130,000. All the equity that I built up over those years on those other trucks went right out the window because that truck, went up so much. And here's the thing, I didn't go truck for truck. If I'd have bought the same truck as the last ones, it would have been almost $140,000. I went down because I wasn't going to pay that much. I tell people I went from the Lincoln to the Taurus, but trucking's a business, so
Yeah.
you have to make business decisions. So, and that's why I could have bought the more expensive truck, but it wasn't that important to me, so
And if all of a sudden you got to pay 300,000, 400,000
I
for one
couldn't
of
have
these,
done it.
for one of these trucks, but if you did, then that means the cost of what you're charging these factories to move their products is going to go up, which is in turn makes it that the consumer is going to pay more, correct?
100%. If you think you're paying a lot for your strawberries and stuff at the grocery and meat and all these things at the grocery store now, wait till something like this happens.
Yeah.
Because the price of because again, I had a pretty good gig in my trucking, but there's no way I could afford a $400,000 truck. There's no way. So, or more.
Well,
So
that's going to
so the prices, my rates would have had to triple or quadruple maybe for something like that to be affordable.
So that's going to put a lot of the smaller truckers out of business, right?
100%. And small trucking companies, a lot of people don't realize this because we all see the big fleets run up and down the road. Small motor carriers make up 96% of all the motor carriers out here on the highway today. So your small guys, your mom and pops, your 1-2 truck people, they're the backbone of this industry. Our trucking supply chain, I always tell people, if you got down in and saw how it really worked, you would be amazed of how bad it really is. The reason our trucking supply chain looks good and the stuff makes it is because the men and women behind the wheel, because it's superly inefficient. Shippers and receivers and folks out there like that, they delay trucks, they hold trucks, they don't load trucks or unload trucks in a timely manner. It's crazy. But the guys and gals behind the wheel make up for their thing, and that's why we have the stuff we have, because we really have an inefficient supply chain. I can't imagine how inefficient it would get with these electric, but it's already inefficient. Thankfully, we have good men and women with good diesel powered trucks that make it look good.
And I know when I was speaking with my nephew about the industry, quite a while back, but he was telling me that a lot of times, when you go to these unloading facilities, that you may have to sit there for 7 or 8 hours to wait your turn to get your load unloaded before you could, pick up another load. And so you get California like now, I think they had it mandated that there's only certain types of trucks that can come into the state. I mean, and people wonder why, things cost so much in those types of states. It's just great for these crazy laws.
Oh yeah, I think California's a poster child of crazy laws for sure. But yeah, you're right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. That inefficiency is 7 hours waiting to unload. When what happens is your relative there, when he got his next load, he made up for all that inefficiency at that other place and went and got the job done. So and got the stuff delivered. So we're not. But there's a good question. When you sit there for 7 hours, say it's cold outside, because that's the thing people don't realize. Truckers live in their trucks, so they need the heat and the air conditioning from, say, the truck. So let's say it's 20 degrees outside. You're going to sit there and run that truck for that time to stay warm. You have to. So if you sit there and run your truck for 7 hours, say you drove 3 hours to get there, you sit there for 7 hours now, that's 10 hours. How much more charge do you have left on your battery? You're probably going to have to go find a place to park and recharge. Where the guy with the diesel truck, he'll leave and go down the road and get another load and go wherever he can, and the amount of time his hours of service will allow him to drive. And that's things we think about. I mean, what happens if you're on Interstate 80 in Wyoming and a blizzard comes through and shuts the highway down, and trucks and cars with all this electric stuff get stuck? Or like what we saw out in Northern California a couple weeks ago, because people get stranded on the highway.
Yeah.
At least, as a trucker, it's always kind of been the code, and the thing is to keep your tanks at least more than half full through wintertime. I mean, I was taught that as a kid with a car. Always make sure in the wintertime it's over half full. But with that being said, what happens if you get stuck on a highway and you're out there for 24 hours or 48 hours, and with a battery truck, and the battery goes dead? You got real problems. And again, I've said this on a couple other outlets. This is where people die and how people die. And you hate to sound that go into that, but it can and will probably happen if something like this happens, especially north of Missouri and up on them northern highways where they get lots and lots of snow.
Yeah. And plus, how do you charge one of those things up when it breaks down on the highway? I mean,
Exactly.
you got to bring a big generator out there to charge it, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I constantly wonder about too, especially like with California and their mandate wanting all the state trucks, plow trucks, all this stuff. For people who don't know or don't realize or think about, those dump beds and those snow plows and all that stuff, that's all hydraulically driven right now. And there's a little pump wheel usually mounted to the front of the engine, or a PTO on the transmission, that makes this stuff operate. My question is, what's that do with an electric vehicle? I'm sure there's something they can put on there to drive it, but is it still going to be hydraulic? Is it going to be electric? Some sort of electric armatures? How's that going to work? But then when you're using dump buckets and salt spreaders and snow plows and all these things, that's just going to be more draw on your battery. That besides going down the road, it's just more draw. And I would assume if you got a snow plow and you're dumping salt and pushing snow and running all that stuff, and the amount of horsepower it takes to do it, you're really going to be drawing batteries. So what happens in Northern California when they get 3 feet of snow and all the power gets light? We're not even going to have power or plow trucks very long, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I like what you said a little bit earlier, because when you have to travel these small towns that are out of the way, I mean, who's going to let you charge your batteries there? I mean, I would imagine that's going to take quite a bit of power to charge your battery if you had to sit there and drive to a small town that doesn't have the mechanical or the charging stations to handle a big rig.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I just, like I said, truckers, and I think everybody in this country wants clean air, clean water. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I have a small farm. I mean, I think farmers are the natural conservatives. But with that being said, we've got to use common sense when we do this kind of stuff. Common sense. And to me, what made this country the greatest country in the world in such a short time, because we're a young country in aspects of the whole world. But what has made us a superpower so long, and where everybody wants to come here and everybody likes America. Well, not everybody likes America, I guess, in the world, but why so many people want to come here, why we love America, is free market. Free market built this country. And maybe it's time to let free market work on some of this stuff.
Oh, I agree with you. And yeah, I think a lot of our politicians don't like our country anymore either, because they seem to be hell bent on trying to ruin it.
Well, there's some I would agree. You're probably correct. And I go to DC a lot, and I tell everybody, I gotta go down there, and I've met a lot of the politicians. There's still a lot of good people in Washington, DC. Unfortunately, the good people down there trying to do things, they're busy working instead of being on TV on whichever news network fits your palate, getting their stardom, I guess, their 15 minutes of fame. So there's still some good people down there who get it and want to work behind the scenes or work and move things and great legislation. And we work with some of those, and I'm honored to know some of those people. But you're right, there's a lot of them down there that they ain't worth much of nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There are some good people. We We just need to have more good people than we have people, like you said, that want to make all these changes in the world. But Louie, hey, it was great having you on the show today, and I'd love to have you back in the future. Can you tell do you have a website where people can go to follow you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, and I appreciate you being on the show, and it was my pleasure. And anytime, just reach out, we'd be on. But if anybody has any more information or wants more information or wants to know more about OOIDA, it's real simple. Just go to ooida.com. Or if you're more interested in the advocacy and what's going on in trucker laws and rules and regulations for trucking and the trucking industry, we have a website called fightingfortruckers.com. You can actually go on there and even find out what we're working on, how it affects truckers, who your lawmaker is. And in fact, you can even reach out to your lawmaker via that. I always tell people you can send your lawmaker a message from fightingfortruckers.com that could do some good and help in less time than you can put something on Facebook bitching about it that's not going to help anybody. So there's that. But anyway, thank you to all the truckers out there, and thanks for what they do. And again, thanks for having me on your show. It's been a great pleasure.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.